to get that first office action or a notice of allowance?
Yeah, well, it's usually not a notice of allowance with the utility patent. It's usually a rejection, and then you have to fight with the patent office to get any of the claims allowed. That's typical with the utility patent, whereas, like I said, with design patents, it's the kind of the other way around. But with utility patents, you're looking at 2, maybe 3 years typically before you get your first response. Yeah, in the meantime, your patent pending, but still, if you need your patent quickly, that can be a long wait.
Mm-hmm. And how long do each of the patents last as protected under yourself once it's issued?
Yeah, well, once the design patent is issued, the time is 14 years mm-hmm. from the issue date. Now with utility patents, it's a little different. It's 17 years. It's 20 years from the filing date.
From the filing date, and it could take 2 years till you get the first rejection.
That's right.
Okay.
In fact, my last patent that I got for myself personally, I filed it on March 1st of 2007, and it issued in April of 2011.
Oh, okay.
And we're not talking rocket science. There's 2 parts, no moving parts, but it's just, it just takes that long to get through because those art units are so they're so weighted down with previous applications. There's a big backlog.
So the design, they're really looking at the drawings and the ornamental side of it. The utility is really where they have to focus on the claims and also the design.
Well, more the claims in the prior art. It's a lot more detailed to do an examination of a utility patent because you have to know what all the terms mean in the claims, and there may be 20 or more claims that the examiner has to go through, whereas with a design patent, it's just a single claim. It's just the set of drawings as illustrated, and it basically the examiner has to look at a bunch of pictures when he or she is doing the design patent examination. And by the way, that's what makes doing a design patent search difficult, because there are very few words that you can use. You might have a title that is a single word, very concise, like it might say shirt, okay, and it doesn't tell you anything about what's unique about the shirt. It just says shirt. And so if you're going to do a proper design patent search, you have to look through a ton of design patent drawings in the right classification, and basically look at a lot of shirts before you can know if you have something that's going to go through or not. And I personally, I don't even think it's worth doing a search for design patents because, like I said, 95% of the time it goes straight through. So, how much money do you want to spend on a search when it's very likely that it's going to be approved anyway?
Good point. Good point. My question to you, Kevin, is from being an inventor and licensing products and having design and utility patents, when I go to present my invention to a potential licensee, sometimes it doesn't make a difference, but many times they feel like design patents are almost, they call them of less worth, put it that way. They feel like anybody can get around them, and they just don't feel 100% comfortable with it. And other people really don't mind. So, I mean, I've licensed design patents. I've licensed products without any patents at all. But when you're bringing it to companies, Kevin, what's the difference as far as the weighted, really the protection between design patents and utility? You're saying basically doing it properly, you can get a design patent 95% of the time, whereas utility is much more challenging. So when you are trying to license a product, is it uncomfortable for a potential licensee to look at a design patent?
It can be. It just depends on the company and what industry they're in. If you're in the sunglasses business, design patents are great. If you're in a business that has products where there's something functional, going on, and the design doesn't really matter, then utility patents are great. So it really depends on the industry and the company, what the culture is at that company. But generally speaking, I would feel better having a utility patent a design patent. And perhaps the best of both worlds would be to have both, because then you've shown the potential licensee, look, I've filed all the patents I can on this thing. We have multiple patents pending. I've done everything I can. We don't know what the patent office is going to say yet, but let's, if you like the product, let's move forward in our negotiation.
Okay. Now, do people get confused with copyrights versus design patents?
Yeah, sometimes they do, and there is some overlap. So if you have the option of pursuing a copyright as well as a design patent, then you should. It kind of depends on the nature of the product, but generally speaking, copyrights are for artistic expressions, things that are, that are artistic in nature, like maybe a graphic or a painting or a novel, something that can be copied, that is an artistic work of some sort.
Well, let's say
now,
that shirt. Let's say the shirt, for example. You came up with a new shirt. You were talking about putting in a design patent, and now you're saying also that because of the expression or the look of that shirt, I can also file a copyright. Now, do I file both of them, or should I file separately? What do you think?
Well, if you were coming to me with a shirt and you wanted to do a copyright and a design patent, my question would be, you can do a design patent on the shape of the shirt, the three-dimensional appearance of the shirt. Mm-hmm. You can do a copyright on the artwork that you're applying to the shirt. So if you have some kind of a funny slogan or graphic that you're applying to the shirt with a silkscreen, that would be the subject of a copyright, not the shirt itself. The shirt itself, it wouldn't qualify as under the copyright because it's an article of manufacture. That's what you use patents for.
Okay. Thank you for clearing that up. That's always a big question with inventors out there.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Great. So now there's the opportunity to file a design patent when somebody has something that they came up with that's ornamental. And let's say that there's a product that's out there already, and it's over 20 years old, and it's public domain at this point because the utility patent, let's say, expired. Now they want to take this expired patent and add some other elements to it. Is that something that's going to be design patent because all the claims are already public domain?
Yeah, and so a good example of that would be rims on a car. You wouldn't be able to get a utility patent on what is basically a wheel in terms of how it functions. But if the rims that you've created are unique in their design, the way they look, then you could get a design patent on that. And very often that's what we find. I'll have a client who comes to me with an idea, and we do a utility patent search first, and lo and behold, there's 36 different examples of patents that show exactly that same thing, each with their own little twists or nuances. But if the basic patents are already expired and they're in the public domain, then really a design patent may be all you're left with. Maybe the best that you can get, unless you come up with something new in terms of a functional improvement.
Okay. Well, that's interesting. Interesting points. Thank you, Kevin. What about now? You said that pretty much 95% of the time you get a notice of allowance, but what else can happen after the filing of the design patent?
Well, yeah, that's a couple of interesting things. If you file the patent with multiple embodiments, and the patent office, let me give you an example. Let's say you have a unique design for a coffee cup, and your coffee, and one of the versions is a straight-walled, kind of a cylindrical shape, and another one tapers, so it's slanted. And you file both of those as separate embodiments. It's very likely in that case that the patent office is going to say, look, you filed a design patent application, but you've shown us two different designs. So if they determine that those aren't just embodiments or very slight variations, but they're actually patentably distinct designs, then they're going to come back to you and they're going to say, look, you've got two designs. Which one do you want to use? And at that point, you have 30 days to tell them, I want the first embodiment the first design or the second design. And then you have the option of filing a divisional patent on the other design that you didn't pick. And the good news there is that both of the divisional application and the parent application both have the same effective filing date. So you don't really lose anything other than, obviously you have to pay another filing fee to the government. That's one way the Patent Office makes more money. But you still have, it's as though you filed two patents on the same day originally.
Okay.
So that's one thing that can happen. Now, the other thing that can happen, and it's interesting, I don't actually have a design patent in my name. I've filed several design patents, and the same thing has happened on both of them. And that is that the design doesn't have anything ornamental. In the first case, I had a bracket. It was kind of a J-shaped bracket for holding CDs on the wall so you could see the artwork. And they came back and said, there's nothing ornamental about that. It's purely functional. And if it's purely functional, there's nothing aesthetic about it, then they can reject the application on those grounds. And so if you have a shelf bracket or something, and all it is an L-shaped bracket with some screw holes, that's probably not going to go through as a design. It has to have something that's ornamental about it.
That makes it unique.
That's right.
Unique.
The other thing that can happen is they can reject you on prior art grounds. In other words, if they find something that is similar, or if they find multiple patents that they can piece together to make basically the same design, then they can reject you on prior art grounds. Now, people who have experience with utility patents know all about this, because this is what happens all the time with utility patents. They'll find prior art references that they use to knock you out. It happens very rarely with design patents. But I had a case, for example, where and I can tell you about this because we did get the patent through.
Okay.
But my client had a combination fitted bed sheet with a bed skirt. So it was one piece. And the patent office found a patent for a fitted bed sheet and another patent for a bed skirt, and they rejected us initially because they said it would be obvious to just combine those two things and get what is essentially our client's product. And the way we got that through was because at the interface between those two features, my client's design had a little bit of a ruffled pattern, and that wasn't evident in either of the other two patents that the patent office found. And so we were able to argue successfully that it wasn't just a straightforward combination of those two, and therefore we got the patent through. But there's been other times when I've not been able to argue that way, and we've not been able to get it through because it just turns out that the client's invention was so simple, they found something that was very close, and it was just going to be very difficult to convince the examiner that she's wrong, that this looks like that. And so sometimes there's just nothing you can do. But thankfully that's pretty rare.
What do you think, Kevin, now with this first to file, does that have any effect on design patents?
Well, it's the same effect that it has on any patent. These days, if you wait to file your patent until after you've publicly disclosed it, you've fired up your website or you've started selling your product, you run the risk that somebody's out there going to say, hey, that's a great idea. They don't say patent pending on it. I'm going to change it a little bit and file it as my own patent. And I don't know if we've had any cases yet since this just took effect in March, but I've not been able to get a good answer to that question. What happens if you put it out there and you can't demonstrate that whoever filed the patent was somehow related or saw your design in the public? So I think you're really not taking a risk if you don't file your patents before you launch the product.
Especially with a design patent, like you're saying, it's easy enough to